In this episode of Stories from the Field, we'll be following our work with little owls, both with Dr. Matt Stevens, our British projects manager, out in the field working with the birds in the wild, and here with me, Tom Morath, the Deputy Head of Living Collection here at the Trust. A little later in the programme, I'll be introducing you to two brand new members of our flying team here, Cheddar and Mozzarella, and give you a bit of an insight back from last autumn when we were training those birds to be a part of our flying displays. We will go and find Matt out in the field last summer as he works with those wild owls as part of the Raptor Nest Box project. The Raptor Nest Box project aims to support species like little owls to find a home, a nesting opportunity where habitat is good, but those nest sites are hard to find. These two little owls that live here at the Trust with us are featured in the film. And when you join us in the film, we are back in the autumn when we were training them, and you'll see that they're wearing a little radio transmitter so we can keep tabs on where they're going when they're flying. The birds you'll find out in the field with Matt, they're wild birds, and it's important to mention that Matt has a special licence to be able to carry out the work that he's doing with them.
Three chicks, one tiddler. So one's a bit smaller than the others, but still looks okay, still quite well fed. It's quite grim inside the box. It smells quite bad. Right, so I'm going to ring the birds. We'll have a look at how heavy they are. We'll have a look at their stage of development, how well fed they are. Three's a pretty good brood. This year seems to be fairly good for lots of different species. So we've got barn owls doing well, kestrels doing well. Tawny owls have already finished and they're doing really well. Most times we don't have many successful little owl boxes across the project, across the Raptor Nest Box project. Mainly because I think there are lots of alternative places for little owls to nest down this part of the UK. So if you go to somewhere that's more open, where there aren't many trees, where there aren't many suitable natural cavities, if you put nest boxes in, you'll get them pretty much straight away. But down in Hampshire, no, we don't get them very often in boxes. So each year I might get 3-4 nests in about 90 boxes, but that's about it. But usually I only get 1 or 2 young. So having 3 is lovely, it's really nice.
So you've obviously just seen some very young chicks out in the wild with Matt. These two here are about 6 months old, and their names are Cheddar and Mozzarella. And I've been working with these two since they were very young indeed, pretty much as young as the ones that Matt's been working with out in the field. And they're here as ambassadors for their species. And as you can see, they are very cheeky little birds. They're an amazing species to work with. The smallest species of owl that you'll find naturally living out in the wild here in the UK. And they definitely bring an awful lot of character to our day job here, working with these birds. Though they are small in stature, they are mighty in character, let's say that much.
Quite often you'll get, in most broods, because I only tend to find 1s and 2s, they all seem to be the same age, same size, their development seems to be the same. Maybe in larger broods it's more typical, certainly for other species, so kestrels, there tend to be 3 that are about the same size, and then the other 2 or 3 are a bit smaller usually. But they can catch up, it's just at this point, one of a larger brood is likely to be smaller than the others, but it's doing okay, it's doing quite well. So it's got a nice belly. And the ring's a special size that really it's more about the chick being a minimum age before I put the ring on, rather than there being an issue with the ring being too small. Its leg won't get big enough to be an issue for this ring, so it will never be able to touch both sides of the ring from inside with its leg. But I have to make sure that the foot and the the ankle here are big enough that the ring won't slide over, because that will inhibit it later. So as long as it's big enough, as long as the bird is big enough, then the ring's fine and it won't be an issue. It doesn't have any impact on the bird at all. They're quite happy, relative term I suppose, but they'll just continue doing what they do without there being an issue from the ring. If it did affect their behaviour in any way, if it did cause any problems, there'd be no point doing it, because the whole point is to allow them to live their lives naturally, and this to provide representative information. So there you go, the ring's on nicely, it rotates easily, doesn't affect the bird, doesn't pinch it at all, and it won't go over any of the joints. All of these rings are unique, so this particular size of ring, this is an E-ring, will fit on kestrels, jackdaws, stock doves, little owls, and there's a unique code, so no other bird in the UK will have this combination of letters and numbers. And each ring is inscribed with a web address as well, so if anybody finds the bird, or if anybody finds the carcass, sadly, or the ring, they can get in touch with the web address here, say where they found it, list the number that's written on here. They don't even have to know what species it is. If they send that information to the British Trust for Ornithology, then they'll get the information about where the bird was ringed, and I'll also be notified about where the bird was found. So we get information on movement of the bird.
So these birds have to be really careful about what they might be preyed upon out in the wild, because they're so small. That could be anything from mammalian predators like foxes and badgers. And they also have to watch out for other birds of prey as well. Birds like tawny owls, another owl species, might see a little owl as a perfect snack size opportunity. They are very exciting birds to work with. They're always on the go. They're very, very energetic, fun to watch. What's really interesting is both of these birds, they arrived here at the Trust at the same time. They've been reared in the same way. They've had the same interactions with me and the rest of the team here, and yet they're very different in terms of their character. Mozzarella here is pretty chilled out. He likes to watch the world go by. Cheddar here is even more energetic than his brother, and he likes to spend a lot of his time having a good look at everything that's around him. Both of them have also started to learn who their favourite people are here at the Hawke Conservancy Trust, and we find that with lots of the birds that we work with, that they become almost imprinted on certain members of the team. They have their favourites, although everybody likes to fly and work with everything. It's obviously not always possible, and these two birds here have definitely starting to get their favourites. And I'm just hoping, in the case of Cheddar here, I'm one of them.
So I measure the length of the tarsus and the toe, so from the back of the joint in the middle of the leg to the end of the fleshy part of the toe. And all of these measurements we hope are going to be useful for determining the sex of the bird, as well as providing some information about its condition and its fitness for what it has to do in the environment. So it's used for lots of different purposes. Little owls across the UK are not really that common. They're not doing particularly well, certainly down in this part of the UK, in the south. They're a non-native species, which many people don't realise. They were introduced in the 19th century, but they don't seem to have a negative impact on the environment as far as any other species are concerned. They mainly predate or feed on invertebrates, mainly beetles, earthworms. They will take some small birds, and they're quite an angry, aggressive, sort of feisty little thing, which I quite like. So they always look very inquisitive. They're always keen, it seems, to know what's going on around them.
So here he is then. This is Mozzarella. He's just doing some of his training routines, flying in this beautiful arena here in the Woodland Arena, preparing him for his part in our displays here at the Hawke Conservancy Trust, getting people really, really close to a species that, if you're really lucky, you get the opportunity to see out in the wild, the countryside here in Great Britain. Obviously a species that we work with quite regularly out in the wild as well, with Matt's project, with the Raptor Nest Box project. And so it's really nice to be able to bring that species alive and really up close to all the visitors who come here and make that project a little bit more tangible when you can see the species up close like this. So obviously one of the great things about people being able to get up really nice and close to these birds is you get a really good opportunity to have a good look at those feathers. All, of course, in an attempt to avert attention. They're masters of disguise. Most species of owls are. And the little owl has this exquisite sort of speckled patterning all the way down their chest and their back. And one of the nicest things is if you have a look on the back of his head, he's starting to get them now as he gets a little older, is he's got this sort of white band that goes over the top of his eyes and the same along the back. And it's thought that these help to act a little bit like they've got eyes in the back of their head. So again, it's trying to avert attention really away from him as a meal for another species. These birds like to hunt little insects down in the undergrowth, and we hope to be able to try and demonstrate that in our displays. And they've just got bags of character. They're really exciting little birds to work with.
So none of this hurts the bird because, again, I've spent so long being obsessed by them, there's no way I'd want to do anything that causes any damage, undue stress. Because, I mean, you can see that they're not that fussed. The good thing about wild animals is that they do seem to be able to just forget everything. So they, in terms of their development, they open their eyes at about just after a week, so in their sort of 7th, 8th, 9th day. And then it takes them about 30 days before they start getting ready to leave the box, or 30 to 35 days before they leave the nest site. But you tend to see them when they've just fledged, all together, all sitting together, sometimes by the side of the road near a rabbit burrow where they've nested. And they're just fab things. The parents are with the chicks, they brood the chicks for the first week or so. They might be in there a bit longer, but once the chicks show a bit more sign of being alive and moving about, the parents won't spend much time in there. They'll bring food back and just let them get on with it. And really, the time spent in there early on for things like little owls and things like kestrels is when the parents are manipulating the food to give to the youngsters. The first consideration is always the welfare of the bird, and so you'd never do anything that puts it at risk. And if there's a slight doubt, then you just don't do it. But that's a sort of standardized protocol that if you go and progress through the ringing scheme, you learn all that stuff anyway. And sometimes it's possible to make mistakes, but and that's how it is. But everybody doing this and who's allowed to do this has to accept that that's the most important thing. And the fundamental thing is that it doesn't do any harm. It just generates all the information that is beneficial for these things in the long term, because we find out all that information that helps promote conservation and do things for their benefit. You also learn new things or improve the way that you do certain things from the other people that do this stuff. So when you see their pellets, lots of beetle wing cases, lots of their sort of elytra sort of around the edges of the pellet. And when you hold them in the light, they look like they've got little jewels in them. Whereas things like a kestrel will be all greyish, nice and squashy, about the same sort of size, one section of your finger, but very different in their sort of composition. This one's a wriggler. And a barn owl, obviously much bigger, about sort of 2/3 the length of your finger and sometimes entire length of your finger. And that's filled with lots of skulls and parts of the skeleton from the small mammals that they eat.
So our mission is the conservation of birds of prey. In order to achieve that mission, we need to inspire as many people as possible to love birds of prey as much as we do. And one of the most important ways we could do that is by introducing them to a bird just like Mozzarella here and educating them, educating anyone from school visitors to university groups to anyone who had just come here on a day visit to learn more about these incredible birds and the work we need to do in order to protect them into a more sustainable future.
Don't pass it by, because even in places on the edges of town, I mean, I grew up on a council estate in Leicester. It was not the most, abundant source of nature everywhere, but just a 5-minute walk and you get out and you can see lots of stuff that if you open your eyes and spend time listening and looking, you'll see lots of it, lots of incredible things. You don't have to necessarily go to the Serengeti or to the Amazon to see fantastic stuff. If you spend enough time outside looking at this stuff, you'll see some really special things and stuff that just sticks with you. Something that's, you can't buy it. Yeah, I mean, you can get a bit of a feel for seeing these things and certainly get used to what they look like by going to places like the Hawk Conservancy, because if you watch the displays, you listen to the information, you get an idea about where you can go outside to go and see them. So how you can go about trying to find these things, how you can experience it for yourself, just being outside. But yeah, it's a good way of learning a bit more, getting a bit closer a look at these things. So that, in combination with being outside a lot and looking for stuff for yourself, it's just unbeatable. You can see them out during the day quite a bit, and they'll use particular perches. So if you know, or if you go outside and you hear the sort of, it's an odd sort of call, a bit like a cat's call. If you hear that and you learn where a little owl is at night, if you go there during the day, if you search through that oak tree nearby where you've heard that call, or that apple tree in that orchard, you can have a good chance of seeing them, because they do sit out during the day.
Since we filmed in the autumn, Cheddar and Mozzarella have become brand new stars of our Woodland Wonders display. And one of the best ways you can help and support us to achieve our mission is to come and see these birds for yourself. See Cheddar and Mozzarella flying up close to you in our flying displays, and also learn a little more about the work that we're doing to protect species like these out there in the wild. So from Matt, Cheddar, Mozzarella and me, thank you very much for watching. We hope to see you here at the Trust very soon. The work Matt manages is vitally important. All of the researching, monitoring and recording helps us to find the best ways to support birds of prey in the wild. If you want to support us to do that, there are loads of ways you can do it, and there's a QR code on screen now.